New day, new break, and without disappointment, another new scandal right here on the front page of the Daily Nation. It is also the big story on Citizen TV today. The allegations of a possible loss of 1.7 billion shillings at the sports ministry with regard to the hosting of the IAAF tournament last year in Kenya. That's a big one today. And of course, any headline to do with corruption has been big today. That is one this entire year. I think this is a year of corruption or alleged corruption, revelations with regard to corruption. My panel this morning, Kipruto Rapkirwa, Deputy Party Leader ANC, and Gladys Wanga, Woman Representative, Homa Bay County. Good morning, karibuni sana. Good morning. Quite a number of headlines. Of course, there's a discussion about the possibility that Raila Odinga could run for president come 2022. We'll be talking about that. MPs want 5-star treatment, and that will be a very interesting one. We're talking about massage parlors, 5-star catering, an improved gym, improved car grant, improved insurance cover. All those things, we'll be looking at that in a short while. Plus, let's not forget, today marks 40 years since the death of the founding father of the nation, Mzee Jomo Kenyatta, and probably we begin from there. 40 years on, what has changed? I'd also say probably we should be marking this day as a special day. The fact that Jomo Kenyatta is not like any other president. He was the very first president of this country. 40 years on,
I think 40 years on, we have moved as Kenya. We have, people being born now are born into a new constitution, and that has really expanded space, democratic space, especially for Kenyans. But I think when we reflect on the things that the founding father said we should be fighting, illiteracy, disease, have we really moved from there? I think that is the question. I think poverty, illiteracy, disease. I think we still have many Kenyans living below the poverty line. We still have illnesses taking away lives of our people unnecessarily, including women just giving birth, still dying. We still have people who can't access education, even though now I think progress has been made as far as getting free primary and now subsidized secondary education. I think that we are making some progress in. So the question is, ile umaskini, ujinga, na ugonjwa, the rallying call, have we made progress there? Yes. I don't think as much. It doesn't look like, in these 40 years, we have made much progress. Wow. But as far as our democratic space expanding and us getting a new governance structure and new constitution, I think we have made some moves there.
Yes. Yeah. His son is president now. According to Honorable Wanga, we've changed a lot in the politics and governance, but probably in the issues that really affect society, nothing much has changed.
Yes, because we've not changed our paradigm. Our paradigm is still the same way. We are doing the same things the same all the way, instead of changing completely to ensure that all the events or all the activities of government dovetail towards achieving maximum benefit for the people of Kenya. You will realize that the president, like now, when he has the 4 items of the agenda, the 4 items don't seem to be feeding into each other, because we are talking of food security, and here food security includes consuming food that is not laced with impurities. And yesterday we saw 1 million bags of rice imported. So we still far. But as far as Africa is concerned, we've moved. We've moved in the sense that there is greater democratic space, but that democratic space, we have to be wary, because all the time there is a relapse. And we run the risk of getting that relapse unless we are guarded and we are vigilant throughout the period. Because some politicians, they may come in as popular fellows, revolutionaries, but many revolutionaries we've known all over the world, they end up being dictators. Yes. So we have to be careful about some of those events.
Yes, 40 years after the death of the founding father of the nation, where exactly are we as a country? Have we really progressed, or the 40 years have simply been wasted in, or spent rather, not really wasted, spent with us trying to fix our politics and the governance system? Well, that's just one of those things that we need to reflect on this Wednesday. But other things that we need to look at, definitely this big one, sports ministry, 1.7 billion shilling scam. It is an allegation. It is on the front page of the Daily Nation. Well, the sports ministry has been in the headlines for quite a while. Not so good headlines. You remember the Rio fiasco. My colleague Wahiga Maora covered that in detail a few years back, just about a year ago. The president came out and promised that no stone will be left unturned until those found culpable of what happened back then are held to account. That is yet to happen. In fact, that story just died down. Now we are seeing something else that must have happened during that same period. Even if it's not the entire 1.7 billion shillings, when there is definitely such a headline, it means that there was some loss to some extent.
Yeah, and for a ministry that was already in this Rio debacle, I think Hassan Wario has questions to answer even where he is in Austria. I sat in the Labour Committee, Labour and Social Welfare. That is the committee that oversighted sports in the last parliament. Right now there's a different committee of sports specifically. But and when we had the Rio, debacle, we were just not satisfied with the way the ministry handled things there. I mean, sports people were sleeping in dungeons, our sportsmen were sleeping in dingy corners, but and the officials were, had reserved even cruise ships, and so on, and they were really unable to answer for the money that they even carried physically, the millions and millions of shillings. So this is definitely something to worry about. I don't think, even being fair, I don't think Wario did much for sports, and this was, the under-18 championships was was looking like one of his bright stars. But now it's been fully dimmed. So he leaves a very sour taste in the sports ministry, and this is very, very worrying. So I think it reopens what happened in Rio. And plus these people must be brought, even if whoever is coming back from wherever has to be brought back in the spirit of fighting corruption that we have now found. Let these people face the law. It's
the casual manner in which we treat sports in Kenya. We are told we are a sports powerhouse, an athletics powerhouse. Yet the way we handle our athletes, it's in a very casual manner. There are those who say that even when the way we pick people to head the Ministry of Sports is questionable, it's like it's not so important. Yet this is one of the biggest employers of Kenyan youth.
Yeah, it is true, and it's also one of the best diplomatic venture that really publicizes the name of Kenya all over the world. As you know, every time a Kenyan wins in the Olympics or any of the international events, our national anthem is played. It does much more than all the ambassadors put together. This is something that we must be cognizant. And at times talent, especially like athletics, you don't need to invest a lot. You just need to invest leadership. And what is lacking in the ministry is leadership, squarely leadership, because it's not really issues of management. Because everybody knows that you are not supposed to take away resources that don't belong to you or take it to another event. Finally, on the issue of sports, our neighbors here in Ethiopia, anytime you win the money, they don't tax. What they do is that they give you an equivalent to 3/4 of the money that you have won and look for you an investment venture that is of benefit. And the only time they will ask for you to pay is when you get the first client. For example, Gabriel Haile Selassie owns 3 hotels, 2 in Addis Ababa and 1 in Awasa. Awasa is the equivalent of Naivasha. This is something that the government does as a serious effort.
All this is from earnings from sports.
From sports. And number 2, remember when Kiprotich of Uganda won the other day, he was received by the president at the airport. At times we win 10, 20, almost gold medals, but nobody recognizes. They come in as if they are going to steal. So this is something that we must engage as Kenyans, and this is a squarely lack of leadership, lack of focus, and also lack of sensitivity, because these are people who are talented, and they don't ask us for anything else. Let's give them recognition and also support them, so that in future, the way MPs get some pension, let them also get some pension out of the effort that they have invested in.
Yes. Back to this headline, 1.7 billion shillings might sound a small figure because we're talking about single digits, 1 0.7. But this kind of scandal is being compared only to NYS, where probably the figures were much bigger, 9 billion shillings, but 1.7 billion shillings, if at all, this is found to be true. This is half the budget that was set aside for hosting the IWF World Under-18 Championships in Nairobi last year. That is not small money by any standards, even for the Ministry of Sports, given the kind of allocation they get, even in the budget. 1.7 billion shillings is a big, it's a huge amount. This says a lot that you can actually hive off half the budget of such a tournament and just move on.
Yeah, it is a lot of money. And I think what we're going to be looking at is an investigation into the 1.7. How much of it, you know, maybe that they did just, you know, we are hoping that they just didn't provide the documentation to the auditor. You know, we are just hoping that they couldn't really just carry 1.7 billion. I mean, they couldn't be as heartless, although we know that people have been even more...
Well, we've seen it with NYS. It just money just
heartless
disappears.
Before, you know, and money just disappears. But we want to see how much of this probably they can provide documentation for. But really, it is a lot of money. I mean, if you look at the stadia that were promised, you know, in Jubilee's first term, they said, oh, we're going to have stadia everywhere. This would do, I mean, if you were spending 300, 400 million in each, you'd do like five, I mean, you'd do
exactly
like
what
5, 6, you know, stadia. So this would be enough to cover our sports people. And there are some smaller stadia, by the way, which you can even do for 200 million. So really you're looking at 10 stadia or so, you know, all just disappearing like that. So it definitely is a lot of money. And it is good, I want to say it is good that it has come at this time when the will to fight corruption is at its peak. I mean, it is the highest we have ever seen in the entire term that Jubilee has been in government. So we really, really hope that not just catching the people who stole it, that we can get this money back into our coffers. And that's why we were talking about recovery of assets of people who are found to be in the scandal, and if we can find as much of this money back to Kenyan coffers as possible.
Well, the PS for Sports, Kiremi Kaberia, of course, has denied this claim and says it is simply impossible, considering the amount of work that was put into the event. But he says, with all sincerity, he'd have to look at the report to give an informed statement. There is really nothing to hide. That's according to the Sports PS. He says 1.7 billion shillings. It's impossible for such an amount to actually disappear. But let's look at this issue differently. And this is in how media has been covering corruption this entire year. There are those who say that, yes, it is good to expose corruption, but the speed at which the media is exposing corruption probably has reduced the media to just that, exposing, because it's headline after headline. As you mentioned, we were just talking about the issues of importation of rice, 1 million bags, and that was a headline on Monday. Even before we probe that further, there's this news scandal at the sports ministry. Before that, there was a sugar importation. Before that, there was... It's just headline after headline in quick succession. Does it even give us time to actually digest and probe any issue to its conclusion? Because many people will say, yes, we were talking about the NYS season 2 just the other day. Where is that now? It's not anywhere in the headlines. We're talking about Kenya Power. Where is it? We're talking about Kenya Pipeline. Who's even investigating it further?
Well, what we need to do, because now there is the issue of the sub judice. Once something has been lifted and taken to court, then the media is restricted in how much it can report on that issue. But I think what the media should do is a periodical report, or the kind of a report form, to say, okay, these are the scandals of the month or of the year, and this is where we are. That will assist us to track, because even as we have lost, it is, even when you talk of 1.7, you say, oh, this is a small story, but it's a big story, given the fact that farmers in Trans Nzoia and other parts of the country, this month, I think the Honorable Eugene Wamalwa said they had released 1.4 billion for their payment. They still owe some of us. But you now have to go and get certificate of good conduct. You have to show where you planted the maize, really. and this is your maize, and they know the name is yours, and the maize is yours, but they want you again to go for certificate of good conduct. Now for 1.4 billion shillings, and this is your money.
Yes.
And it's not one farmer. 1.4 means millions of farmers. Yeah. So it is something big, but the media should not get tired. In fact, I think now these guys are now stealing. They are no longer robbing. From the beginning of 2013, actually the Jubilee administration was a gang of robbers. Now they have gone down. They are now stealing. They no longer have the courage to rob.
Wow. It's a big, big words there. But in how the media is covering it, because some will say that probably one headline is just being used to divert attention from another one. Probably because there are issues that are not even before courts. Issues to do with maize, importation of maize that we talked about, and then it just fizzled out. Issues to do even with the sugar report. No one is in court yet, so even the media can continue talking about it, despite the fact that Parliament bungled their own probe. Now we're talking about the loss of 1.7 billion shillings at the Sports Ministry. Do you think that these headlines sometimes tend to push Kenyans into forgetting what else is happening? The kind of speed at which we are releasing new headlines about new scandals.
Well, I think the media is not the one creating the scandals, so really that cannot be apportioned to the media. I think really it is the worry about where these scandals are coming from, and you know, it's a good bad thing in the sense that we are now knowing these are things that happened, and now there is the courage to publish them. There was a time that if the media houses continued to publish these scandals or report them, they were even being cut from government, you know, advertising and so on, or even payments. I remember there was such a time. But now, because of the joint will to fight corruption, I don't think the media can be accused of churning them out too quickly, because they're not creating the scandals. I think what worries us is just how much thieving or robbing or, you know, raiding of the coffers that has been going on in this country. But really, how we continue to survive as a country is a wonder.
But do you feel like beyond the headline, nothing much else is happening? After the headline, then what? In many of these discussions, the maize scandal, for example, where are we? It's not before any court, it's not being probed by Parliament, it's just fizzled out.
Yeah, so I think where we as Parliament, for example, and the investigative bodies need to, we are, because it is our responsibility, for example, to keep tabs on these issues. The sugar one, you know, it was probed, it was bungled at some point and so on. The maize one, I think we should move on the rice so that these matters are driven to conclusion. What I've seen with NYS that is encouraging is that now we know when the dates for hearing for these cases is going to come up next year in January. So when the hearing comes up, you know, the media will be back on it, and we want to see convictions, you know, so we want to follow it up to that point. The issues that are slipping away, as Waziri Kirwa has said, let's keep tabs, you know, let the media not forget. Let us, you know, let us keep tabs, but the media picks stories from somewhere. And this is why I'm saying the institutions such as Parliament, such as Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission have to stay on these matters so that the media finds a place to pick the stories from. Because the media also can't just sit somewhere with all these things happening and you know, have a memory and start remembering, you know. Because news is news. News is not history. You know, history is in journals.
But the temptation now for Parliament, which borrows heavily from the headlines as well, when they decide to probe something. Do you think like they're able to keep up with the rate at which these headlines are being churned out? Because yes, now you're talking about maize, talk about rice, sugar, now we're seeing Sports Ministry. Do you feel that Parliament is able to keep up?
Well, one thing that is become so prevalent is that every other issue, members of Parliament will pick it and say they're investigating. But I hope their intentions are the intentions of Kenyans, that we go to the depth of the issue, resolve the issue, and deal with it conclusively. But you see, there is also the danger that some individuals may start rent-seeking, so that when an issue like that comes, okay, this is another business. I remember in the past, there used to be Quelea Bats problem and issues of locusts. And there were some officers in my former ministry. Whenever there was such a situation, you will see them moving on the corridor very fast, because this is now a chance to be able to do some job that accounting is so hard. Because you can say, I've sprayed millions of acres, but how to bring those millions of acres and see how many birds you've killed, how many locusts you've killed is very hard. So it is an opportunity for some other people to get some side jobs out
So
of
some
this.
people are simply benefiting.
Maybe benefiting out
from
of
the
this
headlines.
gravy train.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's a big headline today. Sports Ministry in 1.7 billion shilling scam. New day, new scandal. Daybreak takes a break. When we come back, we discuss other issues, including the politics. Raila Odinga for 2022. Is it for real?